This video is a follow-up and a response to my previous podcast. So if you haven't watched my previous podcast about why the oceanic esports scene is behind, then I will put a link in the description and make sure you have a listen to that before you get onto this. So yes, so one person particularly responded his give a nice deep really critical kind of response. So I would like to break it down pretty much in this video, because it doesn't seem like that person still understands the sheer amount of discipline, the sheer amount of authority that the Asian culture has compared to the West. So yeah, let's just begin. So the first response, he talks about population. Now, I will admit, I forgot to mention population in the first podcast. So that was my bad. But he goes on to say that population is the primary reason for the oceanic competitive scene being so small. Okay. He said it's the primary reason. Now here's the thing. It is not the primary reason. There are many main reasons, but it is no one primary reason. Alright, so yes, obviously oceanic scene, so again, I'm only referring to Australia and New Zealand. It's got 27 million people. Alright, if you include Asia, so China has over 1 billion people. And Korea has like about 50 million, something like that. So obviously Korea itself has twice as many people than roughly twice as the amount of people than Oceania. And if you put China on top of that, then obviously that is quite a significant difference in population count. However, the requirements or the amount of people needed to be in esports scene. So let's say League of Legends. The requirement. So let's say 10. You want 10 League of Legends teams for your region. You only need about 50 people or 50 players. Maybe add a few subs, but roughly around 50 players. All right. If it's Overwatch, it's a team with 6v6, so each team will have 6 players. So if you want 10 Overwatch teams to represent your region, then you'd probably have 60 players. Now 10 teams isn't even like 10 teams isn't even the least you need. Like I would say in North America or in Europe, the more developed Western regions, yeah, okay, they have 10 teams to represent their regions with their respective LCSs and their MLG tournaments for Overwatch and stuff. Yeah, they probably have 10 teams. But that's because they are a larger region compared to Oceania. So Oceania doesn't even need 10 teams. And at the end of the day, not all 10 teams make it into the international stage to compete anyway. So realistically speaking, you really don't need 10 teams. The minimum number of teams you need is probably more like 5 or 4. Alright, so that narrows it down. Then narrows it down to 20 people for League. So if you want 4 League of Legends teams, you need 20 people. Again, maybe add a few subs, but roughly around 20 people. Alright, for Overwatch, if you want 4 teams, you need 24 people. Alright, again, maybe add a few subs. And 24 or 20 out of 27 million. I doubt that it is just that hard to get someone to have talent to play competitively at the top level out of just getting 20 people out of 20 million. Alright, now let's do some maths here. 24 people out of 27 million actually. Man, that is 8.888 reoccurring to times 10 to the power of negative 7% of the population. 10 to the power of negative 7% of the population. That's how much it is required to actually develop a scene. The bare minimum. So I don't think it's actually that hard, even though you only have 27 million people. But out of those 27 million people, it is not that hard to actually get some players to play at that level, considering you don't really need a large amount of the population, of course. So moving on to the next point. He said, being old isn't so here he moves on to how the two different cultures perceive perspective, and from him we're getting more of the Western side of things. Now he said, being old isn't a reason to respect someone, and what they've encountered in their life and your personal interactions with them will impact the varying levels of respect. The necessity of a hierarchy to be implemented as a flat rule across the board is simply absurd. If you wish to take a role in some form of leadership, then respect of the people underneath you must be earned. Now, this is true to a degree. Now, the second part where he says the necessity of a hierarchy to be implemented as a flat rule across the board is simply absurd. Now, first of all, I never said it was a necessity for having older people in the Asian culture to be respected more. It was never a necessity. You don't need to be old to get respected more in Asia. Yes, old people do get respected a lot more, but that's not a necessity. And it's not something that one person one day said, "Oh, okay, I'm older than you, so you must respect me." No, that's not how it works. That's just how it's developed over the hundreds of generations, and that is just how the culture is. If they perceive older people as being more wise, they perceive older people as being more experienced in their life, and they always wish to learn things from older people. That's how the Asian people perceive the elderly. Maybe some of the West people, they see elderly as just like some washed up people just living the last days of their lives. Sounds a bit harsh, but you can see the two different comparisons. So, first of all, it's not a necessity, it's just how it came to be. Okay, it's not a necessity that someone implemented, it's just something that happened to come to be over hundreds of generations of culture. Okay? Now here's the second part. If you wish to take role in some form of leadership, then the respect of the people underneath you must be earned. Alright, so again, while this is true in the West, however in Asia, if your leader is older than you, then again, through culture, through being raised as a child and being taught to respect older people, then that isn't the case, because that is how you're raised up. Again, he's not seeing the level of authority and the level of hierarchy that the Asian culture works. Like, he doesn't know, and he just doesn't know how the culture works, because he's never, of course he's a Westerner, he hasn't been raised in that culture. So, like I said in the video before, if you talk back to someone that's older than you, like your parents, or maybe you can have, like, of course you can have like a few banter with some, like you can have some banter with mates that are older than you, but like if you talk back to someone like your parents, your grandparents, you're like considered the most disrespectful person ever. You're dishonoring your family and all that stuff. Like, that's like the level of disrespect people see in you when you talk back to old people is something that is unparalleled in the West. Alright, and I don't think he understands that, because obviously he hasn't seen and experienced that. So, okay, fair enough. But that is how the culture works. If people are older, especially your family, especially your bosses, maybe if it's just like an old person walking down the street, you don't suddenly bow down to them, alright? That's not how it works. But if you are working with someone that is in a higher position than you in your job, or someone that's older than you in your family, then you do have to respect them. You give and receive with two hands. When you drink, and I know in Korea, sometimes when you drink, you turn away from from the older people because you want to give them room. All right, so that is like how it is. And he goes on to say, using this as an underperformance for ANZ and the ANZ, so Oceania, competitive scene is inaccurate. Now, first of all, I'm not saying that this is a reason. I am saying this is how it works, and how the Asian culture, in the way it works, seems to have an advantage over the Western culture in terms of viewing your leader. And I'm saying how the Asian culture has an advantage over the Western culture because it is like that. It is how it is. Whether you like it or not, this is how it is. If you look at the Asian scenes, that's how they work, and they have been at the top. Like all the games they've played, StarCraft Brood War, StarCraft 2, League of Legends, Dota 2 don't even have a Korean server. Dota 2, they're still pretty damn good. Now probably Overwatch. We have seen a lot of Korean powerhouses. Of course, the Korean team winning the World Cup in Overwatch. All across these games, the Koreans have showed dominance, have produced multiple teams that stay at the top, and this is how they work. And over all these years of esports, there has to be some pattern going on. There has to be something driving that. And when you break down the cultures, and if you understand both sides of the cultures, then you start to see why, like, how the teams good to get melded together. What's the synergy like? Is there like how the inner workings of the teams are like, and how they are different in the two cultures. And when you see both sides, that's how you know. And that's why I'm doing this, because I'm one of the few people that have seen both sides of this. Alright? Alright, so next, this person moves on to coaches. And he says something, in this paragraph, he mainly talks about how the player and the coach should have, a two-way relationship, and then they should be, kind of like this father and son figure, how they should always communicate, they talk to one another, they take opinions from one another, Now, maybe that is what he thinks, because he's brought up in the Western world, maybe that's what he thinks. Again, the Western world promotes freedom of speech, and a way to express, the freedom to express your opinions directly and freely. I covered that in my previous video, so if you want more on that, go watch it. But alright, so he goes on to say again. He says, that's how the whole team structure works. Teams are based around constant communication and people's ability to work together well as a unit. If one player or one coach clash and don't get along, then we once again reach a formation of a toxic environment. While in the West it is true, players do often clash with coaches. And I do go over that in my podcast previously, so again, for more about the relationships with player and their coaches, you can go back and listen to that. Now, first of all, that's again, this person does not see the other side, and he does not understand that in the Asian culture, the level of pure authority the coach has over them. All right, in the Western world, that's how the team should work in the Western world. That's how teams work as a unit. That's how teams work as one. All right, but in Asia, since the coaches have that authority, and since the players have that pressure of listening to the coach or get out, that's like their choice. They don't have a choice. They either listen to the coach or they get out. That's the only choice they have. There is no negotiation. Whereas in the West, you have that negotiation. So you don't have that pressure that you can be kicked at any moment from the team, because you know that you have more leeway to discuss things, to express things, to show your side of things. But in Asia, that's not the case. You either listen to what he says. If you don't like it, then get out. That's the only choices there are. You don't have any other choices. And since the players themselves know, and I've said this like in my podcast, so again, let's go back to it if you want more detail. But the players themselves know that they have the pressure on themselves for like doing good in the team and doing whatever the coach says. Because if they don't, they just simply replace them, and then the what do you call them? The future, like the references from that team, like would say something like that. Will say something like you clashing with the coach. So if you clash with the coach and you get kicked, and then you go look for other teams, your reference, your record in your gaming career will have that issue on it. Your record in your gaming career will say you've clashed with the coach. Will say you have issues working with the eSports staff. And when teams see that, that's a massive hit. And you'd be like the luckiest person in the world if a team decides to still pick you up after seeing that on your record. And that is why the Asian players don't speak up, and like they don't kind of rival the coach, if you will. So because they know that they can be kicked at any moment, because of the authority the coach has, the players, they don't dare to speak back. If they want to keep playing, if they want to keep their gaming career, then they better do what he says, or just leave the team on good terms and find another team. There's no clashing. Like, you don't start an argument with a coach. That will end your gaming career in Asia. That will end your gaming career. If you don't like the coach and you want to leave, then you have to discuss in a friendly manner on why you want to leave. And instead of getting kicked, you can leave so instead of getting kicked, you discuss why you want to leave and leave on good terms, rather than arguing with a coach and leaving on bad terms and ending your gaming career. That's how, if you want to leave, that's how you would leave. And because getting into a pro team is just so hard in the career, again, my podcast explains why. That's why, like, players don't even like get to the point where they want to ask to leave on the good terms, because at the end of the day, they don't want to leave at all, whether it's on good terms or bad terms. They don't want to leave at all, because they know that if they leave, there is that very high chance that they'll never get back into any team again, simply because of the sheer amount of competition in the region. Alright, so again, regarding to how the teams work as one unit, this is simply the coach telling the players what to do, and all the players are doing what the coach wants to do. That's it. Alright, there is no clash. And because there is no clash, there is no toxic environment, because nobody like throws any hissy fits or starts any arguments or anything, because they don't dare to. And they know that if they do, they will end their gaming career. Alright, that's how it works. Now, he goes on to say that as someone who spent a large portion of his life in a highly competitive team, this is just plain incorrect. There's no one way for a team to be run. Now, let me stop you there. I never said this was the only way for a team being run. I never said the Westerners should run a team like this. I never said they should. I simply said that's how they work. I never said they should do this, they should do this. I never said who's wrong or who's right. I'm just explaining the differences. Now, as we move on, saying this is exactly how a team should be run is a terrible idea. This leaves no room for the team to grow and expand. Now, growing and expanding, I assume you didn't elaborate on what exactly that means, but I'm going to assume that growing means getting better as a team. Growing the team is the coach's job. All the players have to worry about is to practice and just pretty much practice what the coach tells you to practice. All right, that's pretty much it. That's all the player has to do. They practice what the coach tells them to practice. That's it. And the coach's job is to look at the big picture of all these players, and he's gonna say, all right, you practice this, and then you practice this to play around this guy, and then you also try to play more of this hero because this kit fits really well with this guy's playstyle. And the players would just go and they would practice whatever he says, and then the coach would constantly monitor their practice, they would monitor their games, and then he would write down a lot of stuff in their books. Like, for example, in League of Legends, for example, in the regional leagues like LCS, OGN, LPL, before the game starts and they're selecting the heroes, the coaches are allowed to be with the team. So the coaches they're walking behind the team, and then through another headset, they tell the team what to do in hero select. So the coaches are allowed to guide the teams through pick ban phase. Now, if you watch OGN, so that's the Korean scene, LCK, I think it's called LCK now. If you watch OGN or LCK, you can hear the coach talk way more. You can see their mouths move way more. They are talking way more. You can see the expressions on their faces. Whereas if you look at the coaches in the LCS regions, they don't talk as much. They always seem calm. They have the players do a lot of the talking in Champ Select. And this is, excuse me, this is again the different way that the coach works. The reason why the coach talks that much and so much more in Korea is because he is the mastermind of the team. He is the brains behind the team. Alright, that's how it works. The coach is the brains, and the team or the players is the muscle. The coach is the brain of the team. He sees what each and every player does. He sees what every player's strengths and weaknesses are, and it's his job, not necessarily the player's job to a degree. It's mainly the coach's job to polish that player, to get that player to perform well in his team, to get that player to do what he needs to do, to get the team melding together. So, in a sense, like that's how the teams are, and that's how the teams grow. It's the coach's job to make the team grow. That's how he makes the team grow. He is the brain of the team. So, and then he said, especially in an environment where you've stated yourself that criticism is key. If a player is too scared to approach someone to be critical for fear of being dropped, then that is a toxic environment. Now, the key thing he says here is if a player is too scared to approach someone. Now, in the Asian culture, again, this is a lack of understanding of the culture. So again, you don't need to approach someone to receive criticism in the culture. You just do. You don't need to approach anyone. The coach will always be criticizing you. He will always be in your face. He'll always say, why did you do this game? This shouldn't have worked. The whole team was there. Do you not remember the strategy we go through? If you would have done this, that would have happened. The coach would be always in the players' faces. He will always be telling them what to do. He will be always criticizing them. You don't need to approach anyone to be criticized. You just get criticized. That's it. You get criticized naturally. And again, because you always get criticized, there is no fear of being dropped. Because you always get criticized. You're used to it. Alright? So there you go. That covers that section. And he also says, in the same paragraph, a toxic environment doesn't necessarily come in the classical form of verbal abuse or anger. It also comes in the form of dissent and deceit amongst the lower ranks or an organization. Again, this is true to an extent. But however, all that matters in the Korean team, in an Asian team, is that you play and you perform and you win. That's all that matters. That's the life goal of a team. That is all that matters. It doesn't matter if players are actually hating this team and they're forced to play in it. It doesn't matter. As long as they're still playing well, as long as they're still winning games, then yes, they are. They are doing the job. They are winning. That's why they're successful. See, these organizations, these players, do not care about what they think internally and what they think emotionally. They don't care about all that. All they care about is performing. All they care about is winning the game. They don't care if they hate their teammate. They don't give a crap. If that is what they need to work with the guy they hate to win a freaking game, then that is all they care about. They will give up everything. Like, they will put everything aside to win the game. That is all that matters in the scene. Alright? And that is why players are willing to sacrifice so much, because to them, that is all that matters. Again, I went over sacrifices over video games in my previous podcast. So, again, I am assuming that the deceit that he mentions means players holding in their opinions and not being able to express them, and showing on the outside that they want to play as a team, but really they don't. I guess that's what he means by deceit. But like I said, it doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter how they feel. As long as they are performing and as long as they are winning the game, then that's all that matters. That's how the Korean scene works. Yes, it sounds harsh. It sounds inhumane to an extent for a Western person. But guess what? Because they're willing to put so much aside for the game, that's why they're at the top. Now, in the next paragraph, he says, "This may be one accurate thing mentioned thus far in the video. Western people in Western culture do tend to have a heightened sense of self-worth. To claim that we aren't pushed to do better, though, this is simply incorrect." Now, let me stop you there. I never said Western people aren't pushed to do better. I never said that in the podcast. I'm just giving examples. If they're not going to be pushed to do better, then they wouldn't even exist in any scene. So, again, he thinks I'm saying stuff that I didn't say. So, for example, when I mentioned double lift is a pretty determined guy, but it's the way he approaches it. It's the way he sees himself approaching it. That's what makes the difference. And he said, the sense of self-worth that we've developed leads to an increased self-desire to push further, as opposed to an enforced method of furthering oneself. Again, this is the difference. This is how the two cultures work, right? Again, if you want to know what I'm talking about, and how different cultures view themselves as individuals, I cover that pretty intensely in my podcast. Now, to reply to this, that sense of self-worth that we've developed leads to an increased self-desire to push further. Yeah, okay, I can see that happening, but it's not as clear and as straightforward as just the enforced method, quote unquote. So, for those of you, very briefly, the enforced method is just pretty much having no pride, no ego, accept that you're not the best, accept that there's always someone better than you, and just learn from them. And yeah, that's pretty much the quote-unquote enforced method he mentions here. Now, you can see which method facilitates self-improvement more. One facilitates more than the other. I never said one works and one doesn't work. I never said that. I'm just saying one is easier and one is, it can still can be done, but there are more things that can get in the way. And he goes on to say, "I don't see how, though, someone who is motivated by his own will and desire to improve will surely outperform someone who is forced into doing something they don't want to." Now, first of all, they aren't forced to be doing something they don't want to. That's why they're here. It sounds like they're forced into doing something they don't want to, because that is how much they are willing to give up to be good at the game. They want to be good at the game. They are willing to give up everything. And because they're willing to give up everything, they're willing to give up their freedom, their family, their girlfriends, their part-time jobs, the comfort of their homes, the comfort of not having coach in your face all the time. Because they're willing to give up all that, their life seems pretty damn hard. Their life seems pretty stressed and frustrating. But guess what? They are willing to go through that to be the top. So in a sense, that is something they want to. Now from there, his statement breaks down. Because his statement says, someone who is motivated by his own will and desire to improve surely will outperform someone who is forced into doing something they don't want to. First of all, again, they're not forced into doing something they want to. Again, this is a lack of understanding of the culture, the lack of understanding how much people want to be at the top in the agency. Now, in the Asian culture, if you are to do something, then you are pressured to try your hardest and to go hard or just get out. That is the pressure. Alright? For example, studying. We all know how hard Asian parents push their children to study. We've seen all the memes on the internet. We've heard all the stories from the Asian people. We've heard some stories from Asian schools. We all know how hard people push for you to study. Now, even as a hobby, all right. So let's say you're studying. So you're studying. That's your main occupation right now. And then you have a hobby of, let's say, playing piano. Now, even as a hobby of playing piano, your parents still push you really hard. Your piano teacher still pushes you extremely hard, even though it's just a hobby. Your parents don't see this as just a hobby. They see something as another path for you to have success. And that's why you get pushed so far, even though it's just a hobby. My piano teacher, when I used to play piano when I was about 11, when I started when I was about 11, my piano teacher pushed me super hard. In the month, she gave me exercises like just full of these like fast as notes. Like in 1 month, I've never played the piano before. In 1 month, she's already got me playing these like really fast scales up and down with perfection and finger orders and stuff. She pushed me to do that. In 1 year, she pushed me to do grade 5. Without doing grade 1, 2, 3, and 4, she straight away said, "Alright, I reckon you can do it. You're gonna do grade 5. I'm signing you up for it." Alright? That is how far they push you. There is pretty much no Western piano teacher that does that. Like, they don't push you as hard. When they play a song, when you play a song and you get it wrong, they'll be like, "Yeah, okay, that's the wrong note. Just try this section again, then you'll do great." And then by the end of the lesson, if you're still not playing well, then they'll be like, "Oh, just come back next week. I'm sure you'll be better." However, with an Asian piano teacher, from experience, when you screw up something, yes, they don't ask you to repeat the whole song. They do just ask you to repeat that section, but they give a different atmosphere to it. They say, "Alright, this part is wrong. Like, you need to practice a lot on this part. Like, this part is your weakness. For this week, I want you to specifically practice this part." They have this kind of commanding atmosphere over it, and that is an example of how they want to push you to say. That's why Asian students or Asian people, they feel that push. They always feel that push to be successful, to just keep going forward. And whatever they do, they have to go. And even if you divert away to something that the society, doesn't necessarily want you to do, for example, eSports, then you will have to go do the hard yards. You have to put your 101% in. That is how Asian people perceive what they do. They know they have to do something. They know they have to give 100% because they know there are people better than them, and to get anywhere, like any success out of it, they have to give it the absolute 100%. Again, this is why they do what they do, because they are pushed. It seems like they don't want to because they're giving so much. They're having all these people in their faces, but really that is what they want to do, and that is the way that they are doing it. Now, I never said which way is right. I never said you should be following this culture and do this method. I never said that. I'm just saying, because they have this culture, this is how they work, and this is why this has an advantage over this. That's all I'm saying. Alright, I never took sides. I'm just saying how one has an advantage over the other through an understanding of both sides. Alright? So he goes on to say that freedom of speech is what leads to progression in the entire civilized world. You should complain. You should fight for something you believe in. especially if you feel it's to the benefit of the entirety of the team. If you think there's something wrong in a structure or how things are working, then why would you not suggest a better way to do it? Why would you keep your mouth closed about something you dislike regarding the team? If the world works in the way you're saying it does, then surely in all these Eastern countries, they should take it as criticism to work and improve. Now again, this shows this lack of understanding and the sheer amount of authority and hierarchy the staff have over the players. You don't speak against them. You speak against them, you get kicked. I've gone over this before. I'm not going to go over it again because I don't want to waste any time. And then I mentioned this again to him, and he said, again, this defeats your very own perspective on criticism. If authority constantly goes unquestioned, then we'd be living in a totalitarian society. Last I checked, those were some of the poorest living conditions in the world. Now, first of all, he is seeing this as the broad picture. He's seeing this as the country overall. I'm narrowing down this to perspective. I'm narrowing this down to eSports, and that is an entirely different context. Alright? This is how the eSports world works. And even if you think this is wrong, even if you think this ends up in having the poorest living conditions in the world, the results are there. They are at the top. This is how they run things. There must be a pattern. This authority, this hierarchy, this level of submission from the players, that is what seems to be the pattern over the many years that we see from Korea. Now, whether you like it or not, that is how it works. That is how the Korean team works. Again, this is probably not how the country works to some extent, but this is how strict and this is how strict the esports environments are. And again, you're talking about the bigger picture. I'm talking about esports. That's just a different context. So while it is true that if an entire country runs that way, then it's bad. For example, look at North Korea. Alright? They have a dictator, and their dictator is undisputed. If you dare to speak against them, you get executed. Alright? That's North Korea. And we know that North Korea has all these poor living conditions, with people that have absolutely no freedom, with the famine in the 1990s. Like, we know horrible stuff like that happens in North Korea, and that is a result of this hierarchy that dictatorship has. But again, this is an entire country. I'm talking specifically about esports. People can choose whether or not they want to go esports. It's an entire different context. People can choose whether or not if they want to go into esports. If they do, they know they're going to go through that scene. They know they're going to give up all these things, and they're going to have to put on absolutely 101%, have people pushing them all the time, be submissive to the authority of the team, have the team tell you what to do because they know that the teams know best for them. Because this is the thing, that maybe I worded that wrong, but this is the thing, like they view the teams as a higher figure that has more experience than they have, and as a result, on top of the hierarchy of the staff members, they don't know much about the esports scene, because many of them who are living in these team houses are away from home for the very first time. They don't know much about the outside world, so they don't really have anything to go to base off to discuss about any other real life important things like contracts and all that stuff. So that is why they always listen to the teams, because the teams know more about the player in the outside world, and the player doesn't really know anything about the outside world, so he can't say anything about it. And this is how the esports infrastructure works. The difference is, the people in North Korea, as a country, they don't have a choice. They have to live there. Whereas the people in esports, they have a choice. They don't have to be in esports in the first place. If they don't like it, if they think it's too much, they can leave. It's an entirely different context. Now, the next paragraph shows that a well-rounded lifestyle shows incredible benefits towards how a person performs in every aspect of their life. Burnout exists in all areas, with some form of alternative balance. There's a reason the average eSports career lasts approximately for 5 years. A lack of balance and training and for excessive periods of time leads to burnout. As someone who competed in high performance amateur sport, I can honestly say if it wasn't for the things I did outside of sport, I would have given it up long before. The hours and hours of absolutely grueling training didn't get tiresome because I knew that at the end of the day I had time to myself, to be with my friends and to be with my family. With that there to anchor you, it can lead to a multitude of mental and physical health issues. Without there to anchor you, sorry. Especially in a sport where you spend 95% of your time sitting down. The ability to take a break is hugely beneficial. Now, first of all, so in this paragraph, he is talking about burnout. He is talking about why it's important to have other things in life, to have other things to have other things there while you're doing esports, while you're doing whatever occupation you're doing, while you're doing something that requires a high commitment of time and effort. It is still important to have other things in life to keep you from burning out, to keep you happy, I guess, to an extent. Alright, now again, I talked about why Asian players are willing to sacrifice all that in my previous podcast. And again, this person still doesn't seem to understand the mentality of the Asian players. Now the thing is, Asian players are willing to sacrifice all these. Alright? Their drive is to be the best. Now you said here that let me find it. Okay, so you say here that I can honestly say if it wasn't for the things I did outside of sport, I would have given it up long before. Now, so for what I'm getting from that is all those other things, meeting your friends, meeting families, probably having girlfriends, all that stuff is something that you look towards while you are training to help you to keep training, to reach the end of the day. Alright? That's what I'm getting from this. Now, to an Asian player, all that kind of stuff they see as distractions. Alright, when they're training, they don't think about let's go hard, let's get this done so I can do this. That's not how they think. They think like, alright, I need to do this. I'm doing this right now, like, what do I have to do? Shit, like, there's something there that I didn't do, I have to do it. And they go back, and then they keep doing it. They focus 100% on what they're doing right now. They focus 100% on the training. They don't think about anything outside. Because they sacrificed it all. They see them as distractions. They want to leave that all behind, because their drive is not the activities outside of work. Their drive is to get to the top of their work. That is the difference. Alright? While having all these other sides help you to get through it, the sheer determination that the Asian player has, they don't want that kind of stuff. They just want to be at the top, no matter what it takes, whatever it takes, even if it means none of that. They want to get at the top. That is their main drive. And they see all the other things as distractions. Alright, that's the difference. That's the mentality of an Asian player. And he says, and then I responded also with like how like they either play because there's so many people competing, they have to do this. There's so much competition. Like they have to like. If they go in this, they know they have to be at the top. They know they have to go 100%. So he said, this comes down to purely the popularity of esports as a spectator sport. When esports finally comes out of the shady world, and he quoted the word shady, that it's still considered to be in by a majority of people, usually older generations. In Western countries, then you watch scenes that take a real shake-up. The dedication here has nothing to do with culture. It's entirely to do with recognition. Now, while recognition does play a part, yes, esports is more popular in Korea. They have more people. The youth is more into the games. You can say that, and also like you can say that the people in Oceania, they're more like outdoors more. They're not that into video games as Korean people. So again, recognition plays a factor, but it's not entirely to do with recognition. That's where you're wrong. It's not entirely to do with recognition. Why is it entirely to do with recognition? Alright? So, while recognition does, again, while it plays a major factor, you're wrong where you also say this dedication has nothing to do with culture. Again, you don't understand the mentality of the Asian players. You don't understand how they think. You don't understand what drives them, what gets them to that level, why they always seem to be at the top in whatever esports they play. In all the games I listed before, Brood War, StarCraft 2, League of Legends, Dota, Overwatch, all these games, they're at the top because of their mentality, and their mentality is developed by the culture that they grew up in, by the environment that the culture has, brought up. That is why they are at the top. Like you can see, it doesn't matter. Recognition. We talk about recognition here. This is a perfect example. League of Legends was got released in North America. All right. Now, it wasn't until season 2 that the Asian team started playing and participating worlds. Now, that means the Western teams have one whole season ahead of the Asian teams. Alright? So, the recognition here is more on the Western side of things, because the Western people know about it. They're the ones who released it. They know about League of Legends and played League of Legends before the Asian scene did. So the recognition is actually on the Western side here. But even though in Season 2, when the Asian team started to come in, they're going super hard. It's their work ethic, it's their mindset, their mentality to the approach to being a champion, to what it takes to be a champion. They're willing to give up everything it takes. They're willing to give up and do whatever it takes. When they play, we immediately saw results. A Western team has not won a single Worlds since Season 1. And the only reason why they won Season 1 is because they're the only part of the world that recognize the game. The moment the Asian team started playing the game, they were just flooring through Worlds. They took over the Western world. And again, this is the results. There has to be a pattern. It's got something to do with their culture. So the next paragraph is, saying that Western people don't know what it's like to give up everything for a sport is absolutely absurd. Now, I never said that. I never directly say they don't know what it's like. Alright? I'm saying they don't. I'm just saying they don't do it. Because, okay, before I go into this paragraph is talking about sports in general. Alright? Traditional sports in general, so like soccer, rugby, football, so basketball. So, yes, he's talking about sports in general here. Now, first of all, I never said they don't know what it's like. I never directly said that. Alright? So, he goes around listing examples like, look at all the other sports in the world. And then the reason, and he also says the reason it's less of a case for esports is due to the fact that it's simply still not as big there. When esports become a spectator sport in New Zealand, the scene will take off. But until then, that becomes cemented in New Zealand culture and won't go anywhere. Sports across the board are taken further in Western countries. So give it a few years and I imagine you see a total role reversal in the dominant countries. Now, he is talking about traditional sports. Now, eSports is a sport. Esports is not the same as traditional sports. So this is this. So let me get on to the next part. So I said I never mentioned anything about physical sports in my podcast, apart from that little primary school story with the shot put and the discus. I kept it to esports, hence why the title is why the Oceanic esports scene is behind, not why the Oceanic sports scene is behind, why the Oceanic esports scene is behind. We know Oceanic's pretty good in traditional sports. You don't have to go far to look that to see that. Like, look at the All Blacks. They're a New Zealand team, an Oceanic team. They won the Rugby World Cup. You don't need to look very far to say that. And he says, why are we differentiating here? A sport is a sport. Esports is a subsection to a sport. Alright? Now you have on the top, so imagine a tree diagram. At the top of the tree, you have the word sport. Now, the tree has two branches. At one branch, it's traditional sport. In the other branch, it's esports. I am specifically talking about that branch of esports. Alright, it's different to traditional sports. He says this ties to the previous point in a physical sport where you have a coach and analysts, all the staff and the infrastructure. And then he says saying that physical sport is different to an esport is ignorant. Well, guess what? Physical sport is different to an esport. It is different. It is. Yes, you do have the same staff. You do have sponsors. You do have players getting paid salaries. You know, you do have coaches or analysts and referees and everything. Yes, in that context, it's the same. But in another context where the players are playing a video game, where millions of people are actually trying to get into the pro scene, I bet there are more people trying to get into the esports scene than people trying to get into any traditional sports scene. So it's an entirely different context. Physical sport is different because guess what? What physical sport or traditional sport has been around for thousands of years. Esports has been around for, I would say, about 20 years, maybe 30. 20 to 30 years. That's a huge number of years of difference, you know, and of course, as a reason, that's why they're different. It's why do you not want to draw comparisons between the two? Esports is something different to traditional sport. It is something that is more modernized. Right? This is where the difference lies. Now, in traditional sports, genetics play a role. Alright? Genetics play a huge role because it involves your physical body and how your genes give information for your body to build. That matters a lot. That is a big factor in physical sports. That determines whether you're gonna grow up naturally big and buff, or you're gonna be skinny and you have to train a lot. Genes play into these. However, in esports, it doesn't matter if you're skinny or if you're really muscular. You're not on the field, testing each other's physical prowess. You're in the computer, you're playing a game, and it's all about your mind. It's about how you think. It's about outthinking the other player. Alright? And yes, while you can still say that being healthy still affects your performance in esports, because of course being fit, you have more reaction time, you may think faster, but this still stands that esports is mainly a side of sports, a branch of sports about your mentality. It's about how the players think. The traditional sports is also about how players think. There is also some strategy involved, but it also involves a huge amount of physical activity, whereas in esports it doesn't. And that is where the sheer mentality of the Asian scene, the Asian players come into play. That is where you see the strength of their mentality and how they're brought up. Because if in Asia, they don't have a lot. Asia is a country not known for very physically active sports. So they're known for some sports like table tennis. You know, they're known for sports like badminton, but they're not known for these big sports like basketball or the NBA. They're not known for being really good at soccer or rugby. You know, they're not known for those type of very, very physically intensive sports. You know, and and again, it's probably to do with their training. It's probably to do with how much their physical body can handle. Alright, of course there are some exceptions, like Bruce Lee, like he is Asian, but he is like super athletic, and he can probably like run for freaking ages, and like but again, you cannot. There's no one thing to break down for every single person. So this is just a generalized point of view. So in this generalized point of view, the Asian people probably can't handle the immense physical training that the Western people can. They probably can't handle, or they probably don't have the space because Asia is a really populated place. All right, they might not have enough money invested because again, it's the opposite of esports, where the Asians don't see all the big sports, the NBAs and the soccer leagues. They don't see those as something worth investing in. So again, it's the perception of physical sports to esports and how the two regions perceive the different sports. And it's really hard to break down traditional sports in general because you have so many different traditional sports, and so many of them are different. So again, traditional sports is a topic on its own because it's got so much different other areas into it. Whereas esports can easily be generalized into this kind of topic. It can be generalized to mentality, to why the Asian players are dominant. You can see the results. You can argue all you want, but the results are there. That is how they run the team, and it is shown to be working. So, the last paragraph, he says, this is what he says. Hang on. He says, basically, it sounds like you're struggling with the changes. In order to better a team, there is no one size fits all. Okay, this is true. If you want a Western team to perform, then you have to apply the Western method of thinking. It's like trying to fit a square block into a circular hole. If you want to play in the Eastern style, then you should play in an Eastern team. However, if you wish to continue playing Western teams, then you should adapt to the Western style of teaching. Now, here's the difference. here's the problem then. This is true to an extent. There is no one size fits all. But again, you look at the results. The results are there. Like, the results are there. You can deny all you want, but the results are there. The way the Asian team works gets them those results. So, yes, let me tell you a story back then, alright? Back when I used to coach League of Legends. Alright, so when I used to coach League of Legends, I coach for this team called Elam Black, and they are an Australian team. They were all Westerners, and at the time when I joined the organization to become a coach, their team wasn't doing too well. Their team was pretty down there. It was one of their performance troughs at the time, and they knew they had to try something different. Their previous coach wasn't doing the job, so they brought me in, and they want to try something different. And because they know that they want to try that kind of strict environment that the Asian teams enforce on their players, they want to give that a go. Now, of course, this isn't going to be as strict and as intense as those Korean environments, simply because I don't at the end of the day, I'm not the head of the organization. It is still a Western organization. I don't have the authority to simply kick players here and there. but these guys are willing to try that out. So I took the in between. So I started being more strict on them. I started saying, all right, you guys are gonna have to trust me. I'm going to list all the team comps and champion picks, and you guys will have to do them. You guys have to. You guys will pick what I tell you to pick. It doesn't matter if you want to play it or not. You pick what I tell you to pick. All right. You do the strategy if I tell you to do the strategy, regardless. And the moment I started doing that with the team, they saw improvements. Yeah, sure. It's not as strict. It's not as like. It's not when they say, "Oh yeah, but I think like but I don't want to do this." Like then they get kicked. Like I'm not gonna kick them because again I'm not the head of the organization. So in this Western organization, I do not have an authority to kick the players. But they did not talk back to me because they are willing to do this. The keyword is they are willing to go through that. They are willing to try this. Alright? They are willing to have the coach dictate everything. They are willing to have the coach, talk through everything, be the complete brain of the team, and just have the team be the muscle. They're willing to try that kind of style. And guess what? It worked. Like, the moment I started going that style of the team, they saw results. They surpassed their sister team, Elam White. They were one of the top 4 teams in their local regions. I think it was in Melbourne. They were one of the top 4 teams there. And when before I came in, there were nobody. They weren't even like they're still in the amateur scene trying to get in. And by the time I was finished with them, they were one of the top 4 teams in Melbourne. All right. So there is no one size fits all. So this kind of contradicts here. There is no one size fits all. If you wish to continue playing with Western teams, then you should adapt to the Western style of teaching. Now here what I'm getting is that only the Western style of teaching will work on Western teams. Only the Asian style of teaching will work on the Asian teams. That is what I'm getting from this, and this is completely untrue, which is proved by the story I just told you. So having having these cultural differences can be a challenge to transition to one another. It is a challenge to transition to one another for most people because they don't understand. Like the person that responded, they don't understand the sheer amount of pressure and the mentality that the Asian players have, and the authority that the Asian players have over them. They don't understand that. Even after the podcast, when I explain to them, they still don't understand that because they've never seen it for themselves. They've never experienced it. So that's why this is a challenge to transition to one another. But with Elam Black, I didn't simply just skip straight from, one way of running the team to bam, like straight into 100% Asian way of running the team. I didn't do that. I kept the in between. I took little steps. I said, you know what? Let me do this. All right? Let me do this. And as I was getting to know these players, as I was getting to know their play styles, their favorite heroes, if they want to have a star player, how they want to play around. As I was getting to know these players, I was putting in these little steps. Alright? So I was putting in... So first of all, like, when I first joined, I would say, you know what? Like, go play whatever you're comfortable with because I don't know anything about the team. I want to see what they want to play. I want to see what they prefer to play. I want to see what they're confident on. So I let them play, and then after 2 weeks of watching them play, I say I got a real idea. I got a good idea of what they want to play. So I said to the team, all right. So from now on, I will tell you which heroes to pick. You don't have a say in which heroes to pick. I didn't exactly say those words, but this is essentially how it was. I will tell you which heroes to pick. You will pick those heroes. Alright? And they said, yeah, okay, alright. And I said, if this team comp doesn't work, it's not your fault. It's my fault. If you pick the wrong hero, or if I told you to pick the wrong hero, it's on me. it's my problem, not yours. You just focus on playing the hero. You just focus on playing the hero to the best of your ability in the game. And then that's the first step I took. And then the second step, as I started watching the teams play more, I got an idea of their strategy. I got an idea of what specific strategies and map and like gank routes and flank routes they want to run. So I said, so after another 2 weeks, I said, all right, I've got a lot of notes here, and I'm seeing patterns. So from now on, you're gonna run the strategy I tell you to. Again, you run the strategy. Don't worry about if it's the wrong strategy. Again, this is my problem. You just do this, you just perform that strategy and execute it to the best of your ability in the game. If it's wrong, if it doesn't work, then that's my problem. So I started taking these steps into becoming that more strict environment that the Asian culture has. I'm taking these little steps, and little by little they started accepting it. They started working towards it because they saw the results. All right, that's the difference. They're a Western team. Now, the statement is that if you wish to continue playing the Western teams, then you should adapt to the Western style of teaching. Now, doesn't that always say that? Doesn't that also say that you're also the one struggling with changes? Because the owner of the organization, which is me in this case, I don't want to 100% follow the Western style of teaching. I want to do what I did with Elon Black. I want to put these small steps in, and eventually I want to put this environment in because I want the players to be at the top. Now it's up to the players on how much they would give up to be at the top. And to be honest, I don't expect them to give up as much as the Korean pro players do to be at the top. But I do think that if I implement this, if you start taking these step by step, you probably might just start seeing results. Now, I notice how I never said one side was wrong. I never said one side was right. I just said, this side is doing this, and here is why they have these results. Alright? This is what I'm saying. There is no wrong or right. Yes, they're both different. They both want the best for their players. They approach it in different ways. But one way has an advantage over the other. That is all I'm saying. And I'm just explaining why.